This is West Cornwall's Coast FM.
Coast FM.
Coast FM's Celebrity Science, bringing you interviews with scientists, celebrities, and special guests. Hey, good evening. Thank you very much for joining me, Ben Makin, here on Coast FM for this week's episode of Celebrity Science, the show that brings you interviews with scientists, celebrities, and very special guests. Now, as always, people, if you want to get in touch tonight as I'm presenting the show, if you've got a special little song, well, you know what? I'll get it straight on for you. All you need to do is text your name and your message to the Coastline as I'm presenting to you. This evening, ladies and gents, I shall get your requests on, your little shout-outs out, whatever you want, I'm here for you, okay? That number is 07441 900 600. What was that number again, Ben? Oh, I'll tell you again. It's 07441 900 600. Your standard message rates will apply there, but you know what? A lot of people would say it's well worth it because you get your little song request. Now, what's coming up for you tonight? Well, it's a very special show. I'm delighted about this. Got some really special guests. Particularly excited because I've got the fantastic Dr. Annette Keith on the show with me this evening. This is fantastic. Annette, she's actually a part of a medical communications agency. Now, this got me thinking because, you know what? Whenever I chat to people about medical communications, they often don't know exactly what that means. Have you heard the term medical writer before? No? Well, tonight you're going to find out exactly what that entails. Bit of science for you. It's really fun. And we've also got, to celebrate Annette's appearance on the show with us tonight, I've got you're going to laugh, but I've compiled a bit of a soundtrack, a bit of a playlist, actually. So I've got in touch with a bunch of celebrity GPs, okay? Celebrity GPs. I suppose this was kicked off really by last week because, of course, last week we were joined by Dr. Hilary Jones. Dr. Hilary Jones, obviously a dangerously handsome man. I'll just get that part out of the way first. He's the resident doctor on Good Morning Britain. Now, of course, last time he requested a bunch of tunes. Turns out, actually, there was a song called Dr. Jones. Yeah, Aqua might play that again tonight. You never know. I got in touch with a bunch of guys just like Dr. Hilary Jones and fantastic ladies as well. Celebrity GPs. So who have we got? We've got Dr. Pixie, McKenna and Dr. Harper. They're both GPs and also well known for their work on Embarrassing Bodies on Channel 4. Don't know if you remember that show. Pretty cool. We also have Dr. Ranj. Now, Dr. Ranj joined me a while back chatting about the flu. So he's going to, just for a minute or so, talk a little bit about that, talk a bit about some science. And most importantly, of course, he's going to request a song. Now, I actually caught Dr. Ranj. Now, you probably know him from CBeebies and as the resident doctor on ITV's This Morning. But you know what? Here's something really cool about Dr. Ranj, which I really hope everybody knows already. But of course, he was a contestant on the 16th series of Strictly Come Dancing. Yeah, last year. He was partnered with Jeanette Manrara. Now, you know what? I'm sorry to report, if you haven't seen it, he did actually get eliminated. He was the 6th contestant to leave, but that doesn't inhibit our love for Dr. Ranj. He's a fantastic man. Probably the best-dressed doctor in history, I would say, actually. Probably, Dr. Ranj. Anyway, he requests a song as well. So we've got to celebrate Dr. Annette Keith, talking all about medical communications. You know, lifting back the curtain, the mysterious curtain, unveil what it's like in the world of medical communications. We've got a bunch of these celeb GPs to give us a bit of a playlist after that. So how about that? I've also delved into some of our medical highlights here on Celebrity Science, here on Coast FM, because we have been very lucky. We chatted to some absolutely fantastic figures in the area of medical science. So I thought I'd make tonight, first part of the show, all about medical science. We're going to also talk to Professor Sir John Burn. Professor Sir John Burn. I'm not going to attempt to say all of the letters after his name, actually, because he's got, you know, it isn't just simple. It's not just like PhD professor, no. I'm not even going to attempt it. There is so many letters. I don't know what they mean. I'm not going to attempt it. I'll let Sir John Burn introduce himself. He's very modest, though, so actually he doesn't mention any of those letters after his name, believe it or not. Anyway, I'll just give him a quick intro now. Give him a little intro later so you know who he is. But anyway, he has been Professor of Clinical Genetics since 1991. and he's been a consultant specialist, a world-leading authority since 1984. He's particularly known in the area of genetics of cancer, and he's also led the regional NHS genetics service for 20 years, and he's even helped to create the Centre for Life, which houses an education and science centre alongside the Institute of Genetic Medicine. So basically, Professor Sir John Burn is a big name in the area of medical science and genetics. And of course, in 2010, he was appointed Knight Bachelor by Her Majesty for his outstanding services to medicine, thoroughly well deserved. And he's no stranger to the media, because obviously he's been on Coast FM. I mean, yeah, that's the big cheese there. He also took part in this, lesser known radio station, Radio 4. He went on the Life Scientific podcast. That was back in 2018. And he's talking all about the Human Genome Project. Or should I say the next step to that, which is are you ready? The 100,000 Genomes Project. Yeah, the Human Genome Project is old news. Yeah, remember when we were talking about, sequencing an entire human genome? Basically, sequencing all of the DNA that makes a human, the instructions that make a human. That was a massive undertaking at the time. That seemed impossible. That was like sci-fi. We could look literally at the core code that makes a human, instructions for making a human, the DNA. Oh, no, that's old news. That's long gone, mate. No. Now we've moved on to the 100,000 Genomes Project. Actually, even this is near completion now as well. The 100,000 genomes have been sequenced, but I caught Professor Sir John Burn. I caught him when this was roughly halfway through. So this is a really important milestone for them. I'll tell you all about the 100,000 Genomes Project a bit later if you haven't heard of that. It's really fascinating. Really is the cutting edge in medical science. So, that was perfect to fit right into our medical science special tonight. Hope that's all right. And we also have, now this is another really leading figure, Professor Yang from Imperial College London. Professor Guang-Zhong Yang. Now, he's the director and co-founder of the Hamlyn Centre for Robotic Surgery at Imperial College London. Now, that phrase, robotic surgery, if that doesn't sound cool, I don't know what does. Anyway, he really is a world-leading authority in the area of robotics, particularly in the area of surgery, of course, because he himself is, of course, involved in medicine, Professor Guang-Zhong Yang. But also, he was talking about robotics in general. It really is fascinating. This really did blow me away, this interview. So catch that as well tonight. Professor Guang-Zhong Yang talking all about robotic surgery, robotics in society. And he's also a world-leading authority in medical imaging, talking a bit about that as well. So really, really cool stuff. Really top-tier medical science. So hopefully, this will be really interesting for you tonight. Now, also, we're going to delve into some other stuff after this. So I'll tell you what, once we've finished up with the medical special section to the show, I've got a couple of other features. So actually, we might start with this tonight, just before we do invite Dr. Annette Keith to the show. Before we do that, we might talk live, actually, from Perranporth Beach. This was the RNLI. They were on Perranporth Beach the other morning, giving out a crucial safety announcement. This is the Float to Live advice. Basically, it goes like this. There's going to be more on this in a second, but basically it goes like this. If you ever find yourself in difficult circumstances in water, now, what tends to happen is you might get subject to cold shock. So actually, it becomes very difficult to stay calm. Now, what they urge you to do, the RNLI is really urging people to know, is that if you are ever in that situation, if you fall into water unexpectedly, or if you're in the water already, find yourself in difficulty, you must focus on floating. That's what can help save your life, because it helps you relax. When you float, of course, you can regain your breath, you can stop panicking, and then you can make a more rational decision. Anyway, more on that. We're going to chat live to the lifeguards on Perranporth Beach. As I said, we'll start with that. Then we'll move into the medical science stuff. And also, this evening, Llewellyn. Robert, actually, star on Red Dwarf. He is the android on Red Dwarf. So, bit of a superstar actor. Fantastic. He's also a bit of a tech legend as well. He's really interested in electric vehicles. We were chatting actually the other day, had a discussion all about electric vehicles. What state are they in? Where are they found? All this kind of thing. What's the technology looking like at the moment? What's the future looking like? And also there's an event going on over this weekend actually at Silverstone, all about electric vehicles. More on that later. It's basically going to be a fantastic show. So please stay with me tonight. It's going to be from... Well, we're going to get kicked off very shortly, and we're going to go through till 8 o'clock. As I said, there's going to be a bunch of music as well. Now, okay, I have this Celebrity GP playlist, but crucially, as I said, you can add to that. You just text your name to the coastline. Now, just one last time, I remind you what that is. It's 07441 900 600. Your standard message rates will apply there. If you want to get some music on, shout out, whatever, I'm your man. Just get it to me. Anyway, I'm going to start, actually, with this announcement from the RNLI, and then we're going to invite the fantastic Dr. Annette Keith, Scientific Director at Real Science, to the show. And I'm going to give her a proper introduction very shortly, so you know exactly what's going on. But for now, please welcome the RNLI. Fantastic charity, does some great work for us down here in Cornwall, of course. This is them live from Perranporth giving some crucial, potentially life-saving advice. So please, if you listen to one part of the show, please listen to this next part. Okay, that's me out for now. Don't get anywhere. This show is kicking off very, very shortly indeed.
I'm Steve Instance, and I'm the RNLI's Community Safety Partner for the Southwest.
Thanks, Steve.
Hi, I'm Ruth Osborne.
Thanks, Ruth. Excellent. Well, great to have you both. So let's start, if it's okay with you, Ruth, with your own personal experience with this, and then we'll come on to this this life-saving advice, float to live, of course, and hopefully, of course, get this out to all of our listeners so that we can, well, make sure that everyone's well aware of what to do if they do end up in the water, and how to basically, hopefully, save their lives. So, Ruth, can we start with yourself? What was your experience with the water?
My experience was that I was out surfing one day, and it was a fairly standard day out in the surf, but unfortunately my leash broke, which may not be a problem for some people, but for me, I wasn't very confident at all in deep water. So out of my depth was quite a nerve-wracking experience for me, and basically my initial instinct was to panic because I knew that I wasn't comfortable out of my depth, and the waves were coming thick and fast, and I was getting pounded by the waves, and I was in an area that's known for its rip tides, and I knew that I was moving further out to sea, and basically I just knew that I had to relax in order to remain calm, and trust that I would float.
Gosh, it must have been an absolutely terrifying experience, and it's just so fantastic that you knew what to do in that scenario. This float to live advice. So it's great that you heard that and picked it up and were able to implement it. So that's fantastic. And Steve, I wonder if we could turn to yourself now, sir, if that's okay. I mean, let's talk specifically about what this advice is. I mean, what should people be doing if they if they fall into the water, or if they're in the water and they feel like they've lost a bit of control, like happened with Ruth, unfortunately. What should they do?
Our advice to anybody, if you end up in the water unexpectedly, or if, as would happen with Ruth there, if you find yourself in a situation you're struggling, take a moment or two to relax, just lay back, float, assess those conditions. If you find yourself in the water unexpectedly, then actually that floating will help your body to become accustomed, to become acclimatized to the cold water, which can bring on shock by itself. Take that time to relax, float, assess the conditions, assess what's happening around you before you fight that natural instinct, because your natural instinct will be to panic and to thrash around, but that's not going to help you at all. Actually, that just brings on fatigue really, really quickly, and you'll start to inhale water, and that's what leads to the majority of the drownings around our coast. So really, whilst it may not feel right, it may not feel natural, when you're being dragged out to sea in a rip current, or if you've fallen into a river and it's taking you down to somewhere you don't want to be, it is really important to relax for a good 60 seconds or so, and then start to think about what to do. Whether that's to call and to wave for help, or whether it's to have a go at swimming, either for the riverbank or for safer water if you're in the sea.
Well, Steve, thank you very much for that advice. I really, really appreciate that, and I do hope that gets out to all of our listeners today. And just in case it is useful, I wonder, Steve, if there's any kind of obvious advice from the RNLI for beach use. I mean, of course, I can imagine one simple thing that people can do is pick a beach where there is actually lifeguard cover, for instance.
Absolutely. We're here at Perranporth Beach this morning. The lifeguards are due on at 10 o'clock. Our advice to anybody considering going to a beach, to visiting our coast, is always head to a lifeguarded beach and swim between those red and yellow flags. And if you're just out exploring the coastline, make sure that you check the weather conditions and the tide times, because so many people go for a walk across a beach or around a headland and they'll find themselves getting cut off by the tide, because the tides around the southwest in particular move very, very quickly.
Sure. Well, thank you for that, Steve. Fantastic advice. And just to finish up with, and I promise I won't keep you for too much longer now. Thank you for your time so far. Just to finish up with, Steve, I wonder if, I suppose two things. Firstly, if there's anything else that you would like to add, like to get across to our listeners today, or like to reiterate or anything like this, then you're very welcome to. And secondly, I wonder if, because of course the RNLI does absolutely fantastic work for us here in Cornwall, and I wonder if anybody listening would like to help out, of course, and I wonder if you could urge our listeners to go anywhere in particular to basically help you guys out, whether that be donate a small amount of money or help with volunteering time or anything like this. I wonder if that's still kind of an ongoing option for people if they wish to help with the RNLI.
Absolutely. The RNLI is a charity that's based upon the great work of our volunteers, and if anybody does want to donate their time or any money at all or anything, we're always reliant upon that. So you can find more information about all opportunities of how to help, how to get involved, and what you can do to help us on our website, which is rnli.org.uk.
Thank you very much, Stephen, and thank you, Ruth, as well. I really appreciate you coming forward. It can't be nice remembering that very scary time, but I think it's great that you are doing so to hopefully help other people. So thank you, Ruth. I really appreciate your time as well today.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's a really important message.
Float to live, that's fantastic. So make sure you are aware of that advice if you do ever visit the coastline. Now, of course, I'm going to be very shortly inviting the fantastic Dr. Annette Keith, medical communications expert. And you know what? She's got a cracking song request as well. Sorry, spoilers. Just to give that away there. She's got a cracking song request for the show as well. But we're going to invite her very, very soon, straight after the break. So please don't get anywhere. This show is about to get pretty awesome, all right, folks? Don't you dare leave us now.
Coast FM.
Okay, folks, the wait is over. It's time to invite to the show, for this part, the medical special part of the show this evening for you here on Celebrity Science. It's Dr. Annette Keith. Now, Annette, she's a scientific director at Real Science, which is a global medical communications agency and one of the top-tier agencies that forms the PHCG, which is the largest health-orientated agency network in the world. Now, if you're out there wondering what this term means, medical communications, medical writer, what does it all mean? You're about to find out. There's a lot of behind-the-scenes work going on every time you visit the doctors, basically. You're about to find all of that out. This could be particularly good as well if anyone out there is perhaps a student, thinking perhaps a biosciences student, thinking about future employment prospects, because Annette asked me to drop the note here that actually they're always interested in hearing from talented people who are keen to pursue a career in medcoms. So if this hasn't crossed your mind before, perhaps it will now. This is the fantastic Dr. Annette Keith. As I said, I'm going to warn you now, there's a pretty cracking tune coming up straight after this as well, all right? Straight after this as well, we're going to delve a little bit into our celebrity GP playlist, all right? Because, what could be more fitting after we've got Annette on the show? Well, that's enough from me for now. It's time to hear from Dr. Annette Keith. Annette, welcome.
So I work at the moment in medical communications. So I work for an agency and we help pharmaceutical companies to educate doctors about their products and conditions that they treat. So that's where I am at the moment. And I started as a medical writer right after my PhD back in 2004 in a very similar company doing that kind of thing. I worked for a few years doing that. Then I went and worked for a clinical research organisation, writing up trial results and things like that. That ultimately wasn't for me, but it was useful experience for a couple of years. And then I went back into more of the medcoms arena and just basically worked my way up. So now I'm a scientific director, which means I kind of review all the kind of content that we develop and get more involved in sort of overseeing the materials that we produce and the ideas and that kind of thing, than actually doing a lot of writing or editorial kind of work. So it's all good fun.
Hopefully a lot of students will tune into this, and this, I really don't think this is something that a lot of people think about. Medcoms in general, definitely an area that people should be thinking about, especially if they're in the life science, right? Yeah,
definitely. So I mean, I would say that people come for interview for jobs, and we do hire associate medical writers. So these people are it's an entry level position, and they're essentially creating content for our clients, which is then reviewed internally and all that kind of support. But ultimately, they're writing the work. And when we kind of interview these people and we sort of say, oh, why do you want to get into medcoms? They pretty much all say the same thing, which is, well, I really like science, and but either I just don't really want to be in the lab,
yes,
or I just can't really sort of see a career in it, and I want to think broader. So I think, I did a PhD myself, which I enjoyed, and I'm glad I did it, and it gave me a lot of skills that have been really useful in my career. But you're looking at one tiny piece of an enormous jigsaw,
sure.
And I have got to work. You look at one very specific thing, and through my kind of over 14 years now in the industry, I've worked on everything from metastatic colorectal cancer, osteoporosis, psoriasis, Alzheimer's disease, neuropathic pain, antibiotics, so many different disease areas, so many different drugs, that there's always something kind of new to learn, and it's a bit broader. So you kind of, much as I love research, and it's it's obviously what everything is founded on, we get to kind of not have to go through the sort of slow pace of that, and we get to learn about all the new things that are out there right now. We get to go to the congresses, and kind of cut out all the hard work and find out what's happened.
That's fantastic. No, because actually one of my questions, you've kind of already touched on it there, was, it kind of sounds like a job that will expose you to a lot of really exciting science. And I was really just going to ask you basically if there's anything particularly exciting that, you've been involved with recently that's kind of, taken your interest, but you kind of already touched on that there.
Yeah, there's so much variety, and really, there's lots of agencies out there that kind of do this kind of work, and you can get involved in a number of ways. So there's some accounts that you work on that require you to be very much into the data, and really things like the oncology accounts. So I work on colorectal cancer at the moment, and I've been to all the big cancer congresses for the past kind of 3.5 years, and there's new data coming out all the time. So that's really interesting, and you have to really be on your game to be kind of constantly keeping up to date with it all.
Sure. There's
other accounts where perhaps you're in a slower therapy area, so some of not everything's kind of at the cutting edge, but there's still important drugs that have been around for a while, and then the sort of the challenge is then making an old drug is still interesting for people to read about and learn about. So there's more kind of a creative aspect. So we've done, for example, Congress booth materials. So these big medical congresses, they have stands with the companies, and they have all kinds of interesting things to people to look at. So we've done educational content in the form of like a retro video game, so you can kind of explore your little land. You put your token in the machine, and you get taken to different places where you can learn about different diseases and drugs, and that was very engaging, and people were interested to come and look at it. If we'd just written that in very dry text, probably nobody would have read it. So, there's kind of lots of challenges on different levels to either make complex data accessible to everybody. Not all doctors are experts in everything, and there's so much information out there that, they can't be reading every single new oncology paper that comes out. So, kind of explaining that is useful. And then on the flip side, making stuff that they sort of already know but maybe don't really think enough about interesting, and there's another kind of aspect to the job. So there's lots of different challenges all the time, really. No 2 days are the same.
Yes, that's fantastic. Because I think to the kind of average layperson, I think it might, actually quite surprise them to realise, and of course this is kind of obvious as soon as anyone starts thinking about this, but there's all this kind of stuff going on. There's all this kind of helping doctors and researchers, a lot of behind the scenes work. It sounds like this is going on that people might really just not have any idea about. So I think it's really interesting to get an insight into that with you today, basically. Annette, you're on the show with us, so thanks for coming forward and chatting to us about it.
It's a pleasure. I love my job. I'm quite passionate about it, so it's great. It's a really interesting area, and you're right. You don't know as a kind of a person just walking around in everyday life that all this work goes on, and there is, and the pharmaceutical companies, they get a bad rap sometimes in the press and things like that, but they do a lot of educational content, and a lot of really good work. Obviously they're trying to sort of sell a drug on one hand, but also we're bounded by a lot of rules and regulations of what you can and can't say, and you can't just go out there and tell everybody your drug's better than anybody else's unless you really do have very solid evidence to back that up. So I think there's a lot of really good quality medical education that is done for doctors. Things don't stop when you get your medical degree. You think there's probably doctors that have been practicing for decades, and the world's a very different place now, so they need to be constantly learning.
Yes, that's fantastic. And I was going to be a bit mean at this stage in the interview, and I don't know if you want to do this, because obviously reliving days gone by in the PhD might be painful. I don't know, they might be painful.
Oh, it's a long time ago now, it's fine.
I was just really wondering if you could because there's a lot of postgrads that hopefully might hear this too, because of course we're covering Exeter campuses here, and of course a lot of postgrads and people doing PhDs right now might tune into this. I wonder if you could kind of just talk a little bit about what your PhD was about.
If I can remember. Yeah. It's amazing what you forget, actually. Yeah, so I worked at the Institute of Cancer Research in London, and I was looking at muscle determination in the embryo. So our lab, we called ourselves at molecular embryology, so we were looking at how genes are regulated in the embryo, and essentially how muscle cells know who they are and what they are. I essentially played spot the difference in my sort of transgenic mouse embryos to see where the gene was expressed and when. It was very sort of much basic kind of science, I suppose, and understanding how genes are regulated. It was very interesting, but not very, what's the word, sort of translational, if you like.
Yeah, sure.
You have to have a bit of faith that your little bit of work will have gone into some big bit of work at some point.
Yes.
That at some point might help somebody, and you have to have a bit of faith about that, I think, when you're doing a PhD. Yeah. Whereas I think that's another thing about what I do now, is it's just a lot more it's got more closer to actually patients and things like that.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I'm sure there's an awful lot of satisfaction in what you do, because you're seeing real tangible stuff come out of it, I suppose, as well.
Yeah, it is quite nice, and I mean we do. It's not like, we're not doctors ourselves, we're not sort of sitting in front of a patient and you can see, actually, I've made a difference to that person's life, but we work a lot with experts in the field. So I think perhaps another thing that might be interesting to learn about is that one of the things that we get involved in is pharmaceutical companies will hold advisory board meetings where they get a bunch of experts, real top experts in the field that they're working in, and they get them together in a meeting and they ask them a bunch of questions about new data that are coming out and what's going on in the field, so that they can understand the landscape and things like that. So we get to go to these meetings, so you get to talk to the real big cheeses in the world.
Yes,
on some of the therapy areas you're working at, and you go out and you think everybody knows about these data and everybody knows the latest issues, but actually they don't. And I certainly went to an advisory board meeting, perhaps I think it was last year, and there was a particular issue about the changing management of this particular cancer, and we sort of said to the experts, how many of your colleagues are using this in their treatment decisions, how many of the sort of normal standard oncologists, and they said they estimated 10 to 20%, even though they all agreed they should be taking this issue into account. So we did a lot of materials, a lot of work talking about this particular subject, and sending these kind of messages out, and I think you can see that now more and more people are starting to take this issue into account when they're making their treatment decisions. And so you can kind of feel like, well, we've had an influence there for good. I think I've probably got around it in a bit of a roundabout way, but it's a real privilege to be sort of sitting at the same table with these experts and actually realising that, I can't treat a patient coming in front of me. I'm not a clinician, and there's so many more things to think about than the science. But nevertheless, I understand some of the key issues that people should be using to make their treatment decisions, and actually probably the doctor down the road in my local hospital probably doesn't. Yeah. So it is a privilege to be kind of in that position and hearing those conversations.
No, that's fantastic. I think the example you just given there as well just really speaks volumes of the importance of medcoms as well, for anyone listening in who perhaps hasn't come across this area before. I mean, that's a perfect example that it's a really interesting area. And indeed, if there's any students out there who happen to tune into this, Annette, I wonder if we could kind of just head towards letting you go now. I won't keep you for too much longer, I promise. But really, I'd like to see if you just had any, I don't know, I suppose obvious messages or obvious pieces of advice for any students who might be considering medcoms as a career option, really. I don't know if there's anything obvious you can put across to them.
Yeah, what advice? I don't know. I mean, I think it's a really interesting career. I would definitely recommend it. It's a really good kind of career path, and I would say for me, the job has got more and more interesting the more I've kind of gone up in the world, if you like.
Sure, yeah.
So I suppose I'm talking about medcoms. There's medical writing is probably broader than medcoms, so you could do more of a drier kind of medical writing if you go into the kind of writing up clinical trials and stuff. So if you're somebody who likes to really just look at data and be a bit more quiet, I suppose, maybe that end of the spectrum is good. But in terms of medcoms, I think agencies work in a different way. In terms of my agency and the agencies I like and I want to work in, the medical writers are not just sat at a typewriter writing all day.
Sure.
They're an integral part of the team. They're discussing things with clients. They're discussing things with the key opinion leaders, so the doctors, the expert doctors that are involved in the projects. They're coming up with ideas. They're collaborating with team members. They're being creative in the way that they develop materials. So there's lots of different factors that are involved. So if you're somebody that likes science but doesn't want to be in the lab, and you like communicating science, I think probably even more than liking science, then it's a really good career option. But I guess just to point out that it's not. I always say medical writing is a misnomer, because you have to be able to write. You have to be able to write well, but it's by no means everything.
Sure.
There is so much more to the job that you need to be able to do. If you're a brilliant writer but you can't communicate, you're not creative, you don't want to work in a team, then it's probably not going to work for you.
Sure.
But if you like writing, but you also like being part of a team, like coming up with new ideas, enjoy the kind of communicating, thinking about things differently, then that's the kind of person that I'm looking for, at least in my team.
Fantastic. Maybe we should just rename medical writer just to medical hero, I reckon. Do you think?
Medical hero sounds great, although it sounds like you're actually saving people's lives or something if you do that, which I'm not sure I can quite claim.
Well, Annette, you know what? It's come to the time when it's song choice time. It's song choice time. Now, have you got an obvious choice in that? Because you do deserve one, right? This can be your kind of theme tune for your appearance today. Because, I do thank you for coming on. So this is, a small way of thanking you. And that's.
Thank you.
You can even have two songs. I don't know. It's up to you, though.
Oh, that makes it even harder. I don't know if you've got it. One of my favourites, just because it's a good tune, is Semi-Charmed Life by Third Eye Blind. Do you know that
nice. One? Yeah, we'll get that on. Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Annette. Perfect.
It's upbeat.
Now, is that the only one I can interest you in, or can I offer you a second? That's the question.
You can have a free. You choose a second, then.
That's dangerous. It might be Rod Stewart. Is that all right?
That's fine by me.
Okay, perfect.
West Cornwall's Coast FM.
No, I'm so sorry. There's only one Rod Stewart song that could come on now. Next up, we've got the Celebrity GP playlist. It's a bunch of celebrity doctors who have chosen songs for the show tonight, including, but not limited to, Dr. Ranj from ITV This Morning. We've got Dr. Dawn Harper from Embarrassing Bodies. Oh, it's going to be good. Then after that, we've got some now. I'm going to use a term now. We've got two key opinion leaders, from that last interview. You like that term? Some Coles, key opinion leaders. We've got Professor Sir John Burn and Professor Yang. Now, okay, it's time for the Celebrity GP playlist, right? First up, it's Dr. Dawn Harper from Embarrassing Bodies. What's she going to choose for us? Well, let's find out. See what she wants on, shall we?
Okay, I'm Dr. Dawn Harper. I'm a GP in Gloucestershire, and actually also do a little bit of telework, probably most known for work on a show for Channel 4 called Embarrassing Bodies. Let's go. Right, you may not have heard of this one. I'm going to go Mango Groove.
Okay.
And let's go. I can only think of Home Talk at the minute. It's just in my head, but I can't think of others. Let's go Home Talk.
Okay, awesome, fantastic. I'll get that one. Oh, what a choice! What a choice from Dr. Dawn Harper there. Well, then we better continue with this playlist, haven't we, really? Okay, up next, actually, one of her co-stars from Embarrassing Bodies, it's Dr. Pixie McKenna. Now, what is she going to select? Let's find out.
I'm Dr. Pixie McKenna. I'm a GP.
Fantastic. And Pixie, I'm afraid it's come to the time of the show where I ask you a bit of a daft question. I'm sorry about this, but I'd just love to get you a song choice on, actually. I don't know if you have any favourite songs that I could possibly play for you in honour of your appearance.
My 6-year-old daughter is a massive Bon Jovi fan, so if you play anything by Bon Jovi...
Oh, yes. Fantastic. I'm going to be delighted to play that. That's wicked. Oh, come on then. Go on then, if you insist. Bit of Bon Jovi? Yeah? It's 6:51, a Wednesday evening? I call that heaven, don't you? Next up on the Celebrity GP playlist, that's right, we're still going, folks. It's time for Dr. Ranj. You might know Dr. Ranj from CBeebies and also as the resident doctor on ITV This Morning. But most importantly, perhaps, for last year on Strictly Come Dancing. Yes, that's right, Dr. Ranj is a dancer, ladies and gents. Unfortunately, he didn't win, which I think is totally unfair because he's the coolest doctor ever. He really, really is. Anyway, Dr. Ranj chat to me. Actually, this was right in the middle, actually, of his time in Strictly. So pretty cool that he took the time out to chat to us here on Coast FM. And also, he also wanted to just get a little note out about flu vaccinations. So he's going to do that just for about a minute, and then we're going to get a song on. So part of this pretty cracking playlist, actually. I don't know what you think about it so far, but I think it's been pretty cracking, don't you?
I was going to say, it's great to have a famous dancer. Doctor on the show. How are you doing? You okay?
I'm good, thank you very much.
Excellent. Well, I'm really, really pleased to be here, actually, to chat to us about the flu. And let's just talk about the difference between cold and flu, if you don't mind, because, I mean, it looks here, I've got this survey in front of me from AstraZeneca, actually, and actually a lot of parents seem to think that it's basically just a bad cold, but actually I'm sure you can tell us that there's some differences there.
Yeah, a recent survey showing that just over half of parents think that flu is just like a bad cold. In fact, colds and flu are both caused by viruses, but they're very different viruses. And flu can be much more serious, both in terms of the symptoms that it can cause. So it can give you high fever, aches and pains, extreme tiredness, sore throat and dry cough, which are all unpleasant, but also in terms of the complications that can result. It can lead to things like bronchitis, pneumonia, and even land you in hospital. And many parents don't realise that children under the age of 5 are the most at-risk group in terms of ending up in hospital because of the flu. And that's why we are so keen on parents and carers getting their children vaccinated against flu every year.
Now, Dr. Ranj, I hope this is okay, because I'd love to actually give you a song request for appearing on the show today.
Do you know what I'd really like to request is a song that I'm going to be dancing to this week, and that is the Beach Boys' Wouldn't It Be Nice?
Oh, what a choice. Thanks, Dr. Ranj. That's absolutely fantastic.
Welcome back to Celebrity Science. It's me, Ben Makin, still here, I'm afraid, still here up until 8 o'clock this evening with a bunch more special guests for you. Now, first of all, we're going to continue with the medical theme that we started tonight. We're going to invite next Professor Sir John Burn. He's going to be talking about the 100,000 Genomes Project. Now, I spoke to Professor Sir John Burn as this project was roughly halfway through. It has actually since been completed in December 2018. The full 100,000 genomes milestone was reached. Now, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, please don't worry, because to be perfectly honest, I hadn't a clue what all this was about until I spoke to the fantastic Sir John Burn. So he's going to be on the show. He's going to be talking about this very, very shortly indeed. Just a bit of background on the man himself. He's been Professor of Clinical Genetics since 1991 and a consultant specialist. And as I said previously, actually, a world-leading specialist. He really is a world-leading authority since 1984. He's really, really interested in the area of genetics of cancer, but he's really a leading geneticist. He's led the regional NHS genetic service for 20 years. He's helped to create the Centre for Life, which is a really important centre in the UK, which houses an education and science centre alongside the Institute of Genetic Medicine. And this really is the future of medicine, all about human genomes. And of course, you probably remember the Human Genome Project. Old news, man. Old news, yeah? Way old news now. The 100,000 Genomes Project was this UK government project that actually looked at sequencing whole genomes. So we're not just talking about one human genome here, which is the Human Genome Project. No. We're talking about 100,000 of the things, all from NHS patients. The project was focusing on rare diseases, some common types of cancer and infectious diseases. Essentially, participants gave their consent for their genome data to be linked to information about their medical condition and health records, and this data is shared with researchers essentially to improve knowledge of the causes, treatment and care of diseases. Imagine a future where you could go to the doctors, they pull up your genome and say, okay, well, I'll use this medicine on you because I can see here you've got these genes, you've got these alleles, I know that this will work. This really is potentially the future of medicine. We're going to talk a little bit about what Professor Sir John Burn envisages in that future as well tonight. So Professor Sir John Burn, thank you very much indeed for coming on the show. I'm going to get him on, going to get some tunes on. We're also going to get another final medical guest on the show. That's Professor Yang from Imperial College London. He's a leading expert in robotic surgery. Then that will conclude our medical special for this evening. And I've just got one more guest after that for you. It's an actor, famous guy from Red Dwarf. He actually plays the android in Red Dwarf. This is Robert Llewellyn. He's a bit of a tech enthusiast. He's since actually been running a YouTube channel called Fully Charged, where he focuses on electric vehicles. We had a great discussion the other day all about electric vehicles, where the technology is at. And also there's actually a live show going on this weekend at Silverstone all about electric vehicles. So if you're interested, hang on to the end of the show. I'll play that tonight for you as well. Right then, well, that's enough chatter for me. It's enough chat. It's time to get serious. Here is Professor Sir John Burn. What an absolute pleasure to have chatted to you, sir. Thank you very much for this.
My name is John Burn. I'm Professor of Clinical Genetics at Newcastle University and previously was head of the Genetics Service in the north of England. I'm a senior investigator with the National Institute of Health Research, and I particularly help with the 100,000 Genomes Project, which is helping to solve rare diseases.
Fantastic. Well, a very warm welcome to you indeed, Sir John Burn. Thank you for joining us today. Now, I wonder if we could just get started, really. You know, it is, of course, today is, of course, the 10-year anniversary of Rare Disease Day. And I was just wondering, really, if, first of all, we could just start, just with the basics, really, and think about why do you think it is so important that we do continue to raise awareness for those rare diseases?
Well, the word rare disease often puts people off, but what we have to remember is that there are 6,000 to 8,000 different rare diseases. So even though they range from 1 in 2,000 people down to 1 in 100,000 people individually, when you pile them all together, they affect amazingly 1 in 17 of our population.
Yes.
So a very large proportion of our health budget goes on helping to care for people with rare diseases, and trying to solve those rare diseases and develop new treatments is very important to us.
Yes, and I think one of these very, very exciting. You mentioned it very briefly at the start there, but it's a very exciting project right at the forefront of medicine. And of course, you yourself have always been a pioneer of genetics, particularly genetics in a health environment. And this project sounds absolutely fantastic. The 100,000 Genome Project, which of course has been going. I think we're reaching the halfway mark now. I think. But anyway, I was hoping you could just tell us a bit about the project itself, first of all.
Yeah, so I'm a clinical geneticist by training, and so I spent my life with families affected by rare diseases. But the problem we've had over the years, even as the technology's advanced, is we tend to work our way through one gene at a time, trying to find an explanation. And so it was 6 years ago, the idea came forward that we should maybe approach this on a more systematic approach. And the government put a very large amount of money into developing what we call the 100,000 Genomes Project, where we actually collect samples from affected children and their parents typically, and then compare and contrast to see if we can spot the spelling change that caused the problem. And we've just hit 50,000 samples into the system, and the target is to get to 100,000 by the end of this year, now that it's picked up speed. And in particular, the National Institute of Health Research, which is a branch of the NHS that I work with, is actually now putting its resources into finding families and collecting samples to speed the process up.
And this is fantastic. I mean, it's not really long ago since we were thinking about even just one genome, the Human Genome Project, and we were thinking about that, weren't we? And thinking, wow, this is big news.
Absolutely. So we built a big centre called the Centre for Life in Newcastle as one of the Millennium Landmark projects to celebrate the sequencing of the human genome in 2000, and that was an amazing achievement.
Yes.
But about 10 years ago, new technology actually developed in Britain allowed us to start sequencing on an industrial scale.
Yes.
And we've now got machines that will, for example, we can pull out the 20,000 genes themselves, which make up about 2% of the total, and we can sequence them now for less than £300. But with the advancing technology, we'll pretty soon, for a similar price, be able to look at the entire genome and all of the bits in between the genes which regulate and control them. So the power of analysis has advanced really quite dramatically over the last few years.
That's fantastic. It really does sound like this kind of exponential increase in technology and increasing speed. I think I'm correct in saying that you're actually working on, you've been involved in working on actually a DNA test which can be done basically at the bedside in 15 minutes, which is incredible.
Well, yeah, that's one of my other hats. So
Yes.
I chair a company called Quantum DX, which is based in Newcastle, and we've developed a point-of-care DNA testing device. Some of the conditions we talk about are actually, it's appropriate to test people at the bedside. For example, many of us carry spelling mistakes that make us sensitive to drugs.
Yes.
And in a few weeks' time, we'll roll out in our hospital a test which can allow us to test people being put on a warfarin, which to thin their blood, or we can test to see whether they're sensitive or not, so that we avoid overdose. But that's sort of a side issue. The 100,000 genomes is taking it like from the other end, where you just look at the entire picture, where you have no idea where to look. So you just shoot them all and then ask the computer to tell us where the spelling mistakes are that might explain the disease.
And coming back to, technology aside, just for a second, coming back to, what you get at the end of the sequencing, essentially the idea then is to build up a kind of almost like a tailored medicine.
So, there's two ends to this. First of all, from the individual, it's incredibly burdensome if you have something wrong with you and nobody can tell you what it is.
Yes.
And the family gain a great amount just from getting a diagnosis. But increasingly, we can develop treatments for these rare diseases. For example, you might have seen quite recently using gene therapy for boys with haemophilia, and actually giving them back the capacity to make factor VIII, so they don't need to have injections every time they go out.
Yes.
And that sort of advance is now becoming almost routine. But at the other end, in terms of discovery, as a country, we're going to have the most powerful database, where we've got millions of people's medical records that we can connect to their DNA, so we can begin to understand what causes disease and develop new treatments, not just for the rare problems, but also transfer that knowledge into the more common conditions. And that obviously puts us on the front foot from a research point of view.
And that's fantastic, I suppose, as well. It almost becomes extremely obvious to anybody listening when they think that just how rich the kind of data that we have available in the NHS, and then linking that to the genomic data, just must open so many doors for researchers.
Yes, absolutely. And so, the National Institute of Health Research, I've got to blow its trumpet, but Sally Davies set that up about a decade ago, and the idea was that we separated out about £1 billion from the health budget to focus on our applied research, and it puts manpower in every hospital to take part in research projects. I, for example, set up a project called the Musketeers Memorandum under NIHR, which means that if you're doing a rare disease project in your hospital, you can get automatic clearance to identify relevant patients in every other hospital in the country in a few days, which is impossible in other countries.
Yes.
And that's partly because the NHS is a comprehensive system, so people don't feel threatened by that sort of research. They know they'll still get cared for.
Yes.
Whereas if you live in America, you don't want the hospital necessarily
Of course.
to do these tests, because it might be used against you.
Yes, of course. I suppose that is the kind of one concern for people. I was actually maybe hoping we could kind of just touch on that very briefly, because of course, I suppose once it goes into the research environment, I suppose there are, of course, very strict legislations in place to safeguard things like this. But just in case people were listening and they have that one concern, but I might be a bit nervous about giving access to my information.
It's an entirely legitimate concern, and people want to know that their data is safe. I think people do trust the NHS, and we are in no way going to threaten that trust. The plan is that with full consent, people's genomic data goes into a database held by the NHS.
Yes.
And it will allow people doing research, and that includes people developing new drugs. They won't actually be able to extract that data, but they'll be able to access it. So it's a kind of reading library, not a lending library.
Yes.
They won't be able to break down their individual identities. That's under our control. But they will be able to look across the whole data set to try and find new solutions and new diagnostic tests and new treatments, which is obviously what we all want to see happen. And if that happens in Britain, that brings the intellectual property back to our country, because it's easy to forget we are one of the world leaders, in fact, second only to America in terms of developing new drugs.
Yes.
So actually our industry is very powerful, and bringing that industrial power together with the NHS and our really leading edge work in genomics actually makes us able to really punch above our weight in terms of developing new technologies.
Fantastic. And just, kind of with an eye to the future, I suppose, John, if you'll allow me to kind of ask a bit of a sillier question now, but I suppose, in your imagination, if you can, picturing like an ideal world for medicine, do you think the future is just to have, let's say everybody was to go forward and have their genome sequence, in the future we had that capacity to do that, and we could tailor it to everybody. Do you see that as, could that be actually a reality in the future?
So about 10 years ago, I gave a lecture in a European meeting where I pointed out that If I told them 10 years earlier than that I'd have in my pocket a little device that would take photographs, would tell me where the nearest restaurant was, would allow me to do my email and phone my friends, they'd say, yeah, that's pie in the sky. So, we're now developing portable little devices that will do DNA testing next to the bed.
Yes.
At the same time, you can actually analyse someone's entire genome at the moment in a day if we have to. And do that in a sort of affordable way. So it's not difficult to imagine that down the line, just as computers have become everywhere, from your wristwatch all the way to sort of clouds.
Yes.
So genomics will be everywhere in medicine. You won't even know it's happening, but when you get an infection, we'll be sequencing the organism almost by the bed to see what the organism is and work out whether it's drug sensitive. You'll go to your doctor and he'll do a prescription and he'll check your genome to make sure you're not sensitive to that drug before he gives you the drug. And you won't even know it's happening. It'll just be kind of part of the infrastructure of healthcare. But we're a little bit away from that yet, but this is a very important step down that road, particularly focusing on those hundreds of thousands of people with rare disease who are really on our side in this research. They're desperate to help us to do this work so that we can solve their problem and in the process build our knowledge base as a country.
That's absolutely fantastic. Well, thanks so much for your time today, John. I'll just ask you as well if there's anything at all that you would like to get across at this stage that I might have missed at all. And also, this is the second thing that I'd like to ask you. This is, I think this is one of the coolest questions, but you don't have to answer this one. And that is, would you like to have a song request for the day? I know it's a bit of a lighter note now, but if you would have a song off the top of your head that I could play for you, I would love to get one on.
Well, one of my acquaintances is Sting, and I presented him for an honorary degree in our university, and I told him that I actually sang one of his songs in our band called Every Breath You Take, and I can never remember all the words, and he admitted that he used to get them mixed up as well, so Every Breath You Take would do for me.
Absolutely fantastic choice. Thanks so much, John. Anything else that you'd like to add at all, or is that all okay for you?
No, just that I'd love to come and visit your corner of the planet sometime. I've never actually been to the Scilly Isles, and I've spent a bit of time in Cornwall, but
yes.
I probably won't come this week because it looks like the snow is going to be pretty heavy.
Oh, yeah, I'll leave it just for a bit, but you're always very welcome. Ever need a place to stay, Helston, that's where we're based. You're always very welcome indeed.
All right, cheers.
Thanks so much, John. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
The fantastic Professor Sir John Burn. Now, of course, that interview took place a while back when the 100,000 Genome Project was actually halfway complete. It has now been completed. So really, really exciting area. If you haven't heard of that area before, I do recommend you, spend a bit of time reading up about it. Absolutely fascinating. And what a fascinating guest as well. So, John, thank you so much again. Now, of course, it would be so rude of me not to play this. And he even knows Sting. Oh, what? He's just too cool. Okay, up next, it is our final medical guest for the day. Before we move on to our very last, very special guest, Robert Llewellyn, star of Red Dwarf and tech enthusiast. Now then, first of all, it's Professor Yang from Imperial College London. He's talking about robotic surgery and medical imaging and robots in everyday use. Now, this kind of blew my mind a bit, this interview, back when I spoke to Professor Yang. Really inspirational scientist, actually. Really leading figure in the world of robotic surgery and in the world of medical imaging as well. So let's get him straight on. After this, as I said, another guest and some tunes, and then we will begin to close up. But not quite yet, so don't leave us just yet, all right? Don't.
I'm Professor Yang from Imperial College London, and I spent most of my career working on robotics, and my interest is really that how do we develop robots can perform surgery, help the surgeon to make the surgery better, consistent, and safer.
Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, I think this is something that's going to be of such obvious interest to anyone listening, actually. I mean, it's a really fascinating area. But I thought it would be really nice, first of all, if you don't mind, perhaps just to talk a little bit about the robots that we currently use in society. And I guess one key area of that is, of course, robots used in surgery, which, as you say, has been largely the focus of your career. So I thought it'd be fantastic if we could kind of hear from you a little bit about that. So essentially, we're talking about robot-assisted surgery here, aren't we? Where people might be familiar with that idea of the kind of much less intrusive method of surgery.
Yeah. So in terms of robotics, that everybody is used to robots such as those in home, and for instance, that robot vacuum cleaner as an example.
Yes.
And in fact, there are many robots that are already, either working home or in the city, for instance, that robots used for extreme environments, that for nuclear decommission, search, rescue, and robots for increasingly used for social care for the elderly, robots in use in space, and for urban automation, that a lot of the underground trains that in many countries are being automated, robots in agriculture, infrastructure, manufacturing, many examples. The robots in surgery is very much a more recent affair that it started 25 years ago, that where robots being introduced for minimally invasive surgery. The reason for that is that for keyhole surgery, it's very difficult to operate those instruments. What we call ergonomically, they are challenging, and there are a lot of issues with that. So the robot really simplified this, and to make sure you have magnified motion, magnified vision, remove tremor, and make the maneuver, dexterity, everything to become seamless. So the outcome of that is really to make it to be safer, consistent, and pick a learning curve for the surgeons, and also maintaining that peak performance longer for their career.
Yes. That's fantastic. And in terms of the robotic surgery that you're talking about here, I suppose it sounds like not only is it must be a major challenge for the development of these systems in terms of the robotics itself, but also the imaging, because I'm assuming here that we're referring to, so a surgeon will be essentially controlling this robotic arm essentially. But I suppose that sounds like there are lots of challenges there, such as and I know that yourself have been really well known for your work in medical imaging, but it sounds like a major imaging challenge as well.
Yeah, imaging is that you can see as the eyes for the robot.
Yes.
To be able to get to the surgical site, and also make sure that any single step we perform is accurate.
Yes.
For cancer surgery, is very important to ensure that the margin is all clear. And the other is that to ensure that we understand the safety and the hazard, because that you want to protect all this vital organ, and also major arteries and nerves and so on. The reason for that is that nowadays surgery is not only about saving people's life, and we need to ensure the surgical procedures are precise,
yes,
and accurate, and to ensure when patient is discharged that the quality of life is maintained. So that's really the value for that.
Yes.
And make everything to become what we call precision surgery.
Fantastic. And I suppose as well, I was thinking about, you mentioned there actually, and of course before, I suppose in general, robot use in the UK, of course, there are numerous other examples which you were kind of alluding to at the beginning there, and you're mentioning it, in space and things. And I've actually got one of the UK RAS newsletters in front of me right now, actually, and I was just looking at one of these sections in this, which is really interesting, is the use of robots in extreme working environments, and I suppose space is just one of those examples. Under conditions in which humans just simply can't work, you can automate and use a robot.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know what? I had one thing to tell you, which I think you're going to really like, Professor Yang. Actually, so in a very minor way, I suppose I do sort of use a robot at work. So we've got a brilliant confocal fluorescence microscope at work, which we just use to image algae with usually. So you can build up 3D images of algae. And in this system, we've got this. Essentially, it's the stage of the microscope can be programmed to automatically move across to different regions of your sample, and then the system can autofocus. So, in a very minor way, that's a bit like using a robot for research purposes, because basically the system is automatically capturing a bunch of images for me to then look at later. So I thought I'd tell you that. Thought you might like that fact.
No, it's a wonderful, and this is really that how this type of technology can increase productivity. Yes. And also the last thing you want is that, when you have a confocal microscope, that you have to examine every sub-millimeter of the specimen. And in this case, that, you can let the robot to do all the surveillance, and also pick up those interesting areas that for, working with you, that to explore further. That's yes. Fantastic to hear.
And I suppose thinking about, just for a couple of minutes, if you don't mind, just thinking about, I'm going to turn to this survey that I've got in front of me actually now that, of course, has been released ahead of the UK Robotics Week this year. And it looks like to me one of the kind of major concerns that come out to people, I suppose, if not the only concern, I suppose, about the use of robots in the UK really comes down to worries about employment. So, whether a robot should be used for a particular amount of time, presumably just because then that, negates the need for a human to then do that role. But I suppose really we're talking more here, from what I understand, about robots that really are just essential in those conditions. So, for instance, that example that I gave you about the confocal microscope, and I suppose just the number of hours that would be required for me to do that all manually it would be completely unmanageable. And I suppose in surgery as well, if you can make a robot that makes it far less intrusive, then to me that sounds like it can only be a good thing.
Yes, absolutely. That I think when you talk about the new technologies and so on, that whether it will take over people's job and not, taking a lot of the people, including some of the media, to take a binary approach. To whether it will not, and the reality is not like that.
Yes.
And it will certainly change the structure of our workforce. Certain jobs are repetitive, easily to be automated, and there is a good reason to automate it. Why not we use the robot? Like the example you just mentioned, that it will be much better to use your creativity and your knowledge of examining the sample and also pursue your research agenda rather than spending all your time just manipulating that probe by hand.
Yes.
So this is really the two-way communication that we need to have with people, and also for the younger generation, for their curriculum and so on, prepare for their future as well.
Well, that's absolutely fantastic. Well, Professor Yang, I really do thank you for coming on the show this morning. Appreciate your time. Absolutely fantastic to have chatted to you. One last thing for you then, if that's okay with you, just a last question. That is, if there is anything at all that you would like to add that I haven't really enabled you to do so through my questions, then please do just add whatever you would like. And also, and this is a bit of a different note now, but I'd really like to give you a song choice, actually. I don't know if you have any kind of favourite songs that I could play for you on the show. And don't worry if you don't.
Now you give me a very difficult one. And,
yes,
I think I'll leave this choice to you, that what to choose perhaps a robotic theme for that, and to link the two events together.
I'm sure we'll find something.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much for your time. Goodbye then. Thank you.
Yeah, you know what? I think it's sort of a robotics theme, this one. Am I going to get away with this one? Well, I tell you what, I was going to play this one a bit later anyway, because of our next guest. I was going to play this for him. We actually settled on something a little bit different, so I think I should be able to get away with this one right now. What do you think? Should we have one? Yeah, why not? Bit of danger, high voltage. Yeah, loosely applicable. We're talking, voltage, robots. Yeah, just go with it. It's time for our final very special guest for this evening's show. We're going to finish up with some tunes as well, and then I will have to love you and leave you. I'm so sorry, folks. You're probably very, very relieved indeed. No, I hope you're not. I hope you've enjoyed the show tonight so far. Anyway, before we do close up, before we do that, it's time to chat to Robert Llewellyn. Robert is a bit of a star, really. Sometimes call him Android Robert. Won't tonight, because it's a bit rude, but okay, he's not here right now, so Android Robert is a bit of a star because he's in Red Dwarf as the android, hence Android Robert. He's also a bit of a tech enthusiast as well. Now, he's really, really into electric vehicles. He runs a YouTube channel called Fully Charged, where he talks all about the technology, and he's actually running a live Fully Charged event over this weekend at Silverstone. So this is pretty cool, so listen out if you're interested in that kind of thing. We had a great discussion all about the technology, where we're at with it, and all that kind of thing. So listen close. This is the final interview for you tonight. Anyway, here he is. Here's Robert. You know what, Robert? A pleasure to welcome you back to the show. We had you on a while back now, actually. So welcome back. How you doing?
Thank you very much. Very good, thank you.
Excellent. I think I rudely called you Android Robert last time because we had two Roberts on the line, so I won't do that this time. Sorry about that.
I'm happy to be called anything, Robert. That's fine. I wouldn't...
I'll call you Sir Robert for the day.
Sir Robert is good.
Oh, okay, I'll call you Sir Robert. Thank you very much. It's very, very exciting to be talking to you, actually, especially ahead of the Fully Charged event. But, I just wanted to start by saying, actually, I think there's,
everyone's getting so excited about electric vehicles at the moment. I think it's fantastic. I was actually, we were chatting to a former Stig, Ben Collins, the other day, actually, and I asked him, oh, so Ben, in all of your time as the Stig, what was your favourite car to drive? And, interestingly, he said, well, actually, I'm going to dodge the question because actually I'm most excited about the development of electric vehicles. So there we have it. So even the Stig is on board with this.
The Stig, he's amazing, Ben. No, he's a very nice guy. No, he's been a very keen supporter of electric vehicles for a long time. He's very good. Yeah.
No, that's absolutely. It's brilliant to know that people are getting excited about this. And obviously, Robert, you've been an absolute advocate for this for a long time yourself, haven't you? So. I mean, what excites you the most about it, Robert, about the development of these, electric vehicles?
I mean, I think the thing that intrigues me the most, and which has really sort of become apparent in the last 5 years, is certainly there are now such an amazing array and a wide range of different electric cars and vans and buses as well. That's a equally, if not more important aspect. Sure. Electric buses are really transformative, and they're coming thick and fast. But I think the sort of side to it that it would be hard to have envisioned, say, 10 years ago, is the way they can integrate into your home or into your workplace or anything like that. That in some ways, the technology is still in its early stages yet, but it's definitely being proven around the world, is that you can use the battery in a car for more than just driving the car along. So you can use it as an energy storage system, a static energy storage system in your home or in your office. I saw an office in Tokyo that was entirely run by about 40 electric cars that were plugged in outside.
Wow.
And they have a lot of energy stored in them, and as long as the owners of those cars can get home at the end of the night, yes. And what we're not talking about, they just drain them all completely. They take a little bit out of each one, and that the amalgamated power from that is enough to run a quite a large office with a lot of people in it. So there's a lot of things that are now becoming apparent that, you charge a car at night when electricity is cheap and abundant, when we have more electricity than we need because we're all asleep, we're not using it. So that's the time you charge a car, and you can use that power in the day to either drive the car or run your house or run an office, and that stuff. I wouldn't have known that was even plausible 10 years ago, and that's, there's a lot of very interesting technology that's been stimulated by the development of electric cars.
Well, yeah, I think it's just such a... What a thought, thinking to the future. Imagine if, this is just completely commonplace and everyone looks back and thinking, oh, they used to drive those dirty petrol and diesel cars. Yes. What were they doing,
Yeah, I think, even my own children who are in their 20s are sort of, when my daughter had to learn to drive a petrol car she learned to drive an electric car with me when she had to learn to use a manual gearbox in a petrol car. She just thought she kept laughing. The guy who taught her was confused because she goes, do you really have to move this lever around? And you have to push this pedal? It seemed absolutely archaic, sort of Stone Age technology to have to use that stuff. She was completely baffled by it.
Yeah, she probably thought, what's next? Do I have to get out and shovel coal into the rear of the vehicle? Yeah, I think it's certainly encouraging that was her reaction, and hopefully that becomes the kind of normal reaction of a lot of people, looking to the future.
I think it will. I think what we're seeing at the moment is, and this is not just in this country, it's global, is a very, very rapid collapse in the sales of new diesel cars. And even then a kind of steadying off of the sales of new petrol cars and a very big increase in the sale of electric ones. And so I think what we're seeing is a public-driven change. There is some government legislation in place that we're going to ban the sale of new diesel and petrol cars by 2040. I think we would have seen a complete transformation way before that. The next 3 to 5 years, we're going to see a really big change because it's affecting so many industries. I've just been on an electric ferry that crosses the sea between Denmark and Sweden. It's got batteries on it. It gets charged in each harbour when it stops and unloads. And we're not talking a little boat. This is a massive ship with loads of trucks and cars on it. And there are now electric aeroplanes. A lot of people are talking about electric short-haul electric flights by 2025. But small passenger planes that are 100% electric. Stuff I wouldn't even have dreamt of suggesting even 5 years ago. The technology is developing so fast. The batteries are improving so much. It really is a very exciting time to be following all these different industries. It's very wide-ranging.
That's fantastic. And Robert, just kind of, I don't know if this is kind of moving away too far from the area, and I must say I'm absolutely no expert at all. So if this is a really silly question, then please do excuse it. But I'm just thinking about because of course, let's imagine everyone does shift onto electric vehicles in the future, and obviously that would be fantastic. But I suppose what it's doing is, of course, it is removing the need to burn the fossil fuels, which obviously everyone is aware of. We need to stop doing that. But I suppose then it shifts the question to, making sure that the power stations that we're using are all off fossil fuels as well, and all this kind of thing. So I suppose it not only does it increase the efficiency, but also I suppose it allows the problem to be kind of pushed back to that stage, if that makes sense.
Well, it is, yes. I mean, I think the key important thing here to remember is that fossil fuel cars, so conventional cars that we drive now, they can only really use one type of fuel. They can only use fossil fuels. They can use refined oil.
Sure.
An electric car can use electricity from anywhere. It doesn't make any difference. And when I first heard the term, it's called fuel agnostic. So it doesn't care where the electricity comes from. It'll still work just the same. You can't add electricity into an electric car, which means that you can completely change your generating system, the way you generate electricity, and the cars will still work. So that is a very important key thing. It's actually a much more flexible fuel, if you like, because you can, of course, generate electricity by burning coal, boiling water, using the steam to drive a turbine, generating it like that. That's how we've done it for the last 100 years. Well, in the last year, we've stopped doing that. We now very rarely burn coal. Coal generates the least electricity of any system that we use in this country. So we've transferred to gas and to nuclear and in particular to wind. That's the one that's grown the most steeply in the last few years. And we can use that electricity in electric cars. So that's one side of it. The other side of it is we use electricity in a very odd way because we're human beings. So we don't tend to use a lot of electricity when we're asleep. And that is when we can still generate electricity by the multiple gigawatts, but we're not using it. So it's a really difficult thing for the grid to manage because you have to supply as much electricity as is being demanded. So plugging electric cars in at night is a huge benefit to the general stability of the grid. And that's what I was talking about in a way, that the fact that electricity can go both ways. If you've charged, say, 2, 3, 4 million cars at night, that's an enormous amount of power that you've got stored all over, distributed all over the country. Well, that can be released in tiny little bits, not talking emptying the battery. 1 kilowatt hour from 10 million electric cars is a Hinkley Point C power station. I mean, that's when it gets into a really interesting level. Now, that technology is in its early stages of development, but I'm having a vehicle-to-grid unit fitted in my house very, very soon. So it's already becoming commercially available, and it will become much more commercially and viable and available very soon. So those things, there's a big debate about exactly how much more electricity we would need to generate to supply all our vehicles as electric ones, and it's much, much less than anyone would expect. It's not 10 new Hinkley Point Cs. It might be one new massive wind farm off the coast of Cornwall or somewhere like that you can't even see, that doesn't require any fuel, that we don't have to import anything to make it run. We're very blessed with a lot of wind. We're a very windy country, being an island in the sea. So, we have a lot of advantages there. We have the most offshore wind of anywhere on Earth. No one else has as much offshore wind as we do. So, it's something we should be very proud of in this country.
Oh, that's brilliant. Well, Robert, thanks so much for that answer. That was fantastic and very in-depth. So I really hope that anybody listening might want to learn a bit more, Robert. And I know, of course, your Fully Charged live event is coming up. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about that, because, of course, if anyone's listening in and wants to learn more, that sounds like the perfect place.
It is. I mean, it will be an incredible opportunity if you're at the least bit interested in renewable energy, in electric vehicles, and I'm not talking just cars. I mean, we're at the event, which is on the 7th, 8th, and 9th of June at Silverstone. It's a very big event this year. It's going to be the biggest we've ever done. There will be literally hundreds of electric cars on display, electric bikes, buses. It's very likely when you get to the car park and you come out, there will be an electric bus that can take you to the venue, or equally one of 200 electric vehicles that are running a shuttle service. So it's a very exciting day.
Fantastic.
There's also talks and music and lovely food. It's a really family-friendly event. The talks were incredibly popular last year. Really clever people on panels and doing presentations about all this technology, about how the national grid will work, how batteries on the grid will work, how batteries in your home and air source heat pumps, solar panels, brilliant new systems for heating your water using much less energy. Lots and lots of really interesting technology on display there, and also literally thousands of test drives. So there's a lot of big vehicle manufacturers are bringing a lot of cars along so you can have a test drive in them.
Well, thank you very much, Robert. And of course, if people want to check out a bit more in the meantime, of course, your YouTube channel is always going ahead, isn't it? Too.
There's over 400 episodes about every electric car that's ever been made, and plus, if you want to find out more about tickets for the live show, that's on fullychargedshow.co.uk. And we put out new episodes. We do about 6 new episodes a month, so just over 1 a week on the Fully Charged show, which has become very, very popular now. We're getting millions of views every week. It's quite extraordinary.
Well, brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Robert. Really appreciate your time today. Just a couple of things, and I won't keep you too much longer now. I'd love to keep you on for way longer, but of course I'm going to have to let you go at some point. So, just a couple of things. Firstly, just want to check that you're happy and that you basically got everything across that you'd like to today. If there's anything you'd like to reiterate, then you're welcome to.
I think, as far as I can tell, there's a lot of nodding going on. I think it's all right. I'm getting thumbs up from the team.
Oh, that's the dream.
I haven't used any bad language. I haven't said anything about Brexit. So it's all good.
No editing required. Wow. Yeah, that's what I always do. Well, Robert, the only thing remaining then is just to give you a little song request for the show. Then, and is it going to be Danger High Voltage by any chance? You know what I mean?
God. Who did that? Oh, yeah. Who did that? Because that's the thing. When I was told about that, I went, oh, God, I can never think of songs when I need to.
Danger
High Voltage. I'm happy to go with Danger High Voltage. I don't even know who did it. Who did that?
Can't remember, actually.
Oh, good. I'm glad you can't remember.
Yeah, no.
I've heard of the song, but I can't remember who did it.
Oh, no, I'm ashamed. I can't remember. I will find it.
Electric
I will get it.
Six.
Yes,
or
that's
Electric
it.
Dreams. What was the Electric Dreams on? Who did that?
That could have been even better. I'll find that. Yeah. And I'll tell you what, I'll find that.
Find that one.
Yeah.
I can't remember who did it, but it's pretty embarrassing.
Ideal. I'll get it.
Great stuff.
Robert, thanks so much, yeah.
All right, thank you very much.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Could we just take a minute just to appreciate Robert's singing voice there? Oh, that was amazing, wasn't it? You got to admit. Well, you know what I've found that I think will fit the bill perfectly? What about a bit of the Human League together in Electric Dreams, yeah? That's going to come on straight after the break, so don't go anywhere. Going to finish with a couple tunes, as I said before. Oh, it's looking like a good playlist, guys. Looking like a really good playlist, all right? Don't go anywhere. Well, it's come to the end of the show, I'm afraid, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in to tonight's episode of Celebrity Science here on Coast FM. Thank you for joining me. Now, I want to thank as well all of my very special guests from this evening's show. Thanks to Dr. Annette Keith, medical communications expert from Real Science Medical Communications Agency. Thanks very much, Annette. Pleasure having you on. Thanks to all of our GPs, our celebrity GPs, who contributed to the so-called Celebrity GP playlist. Okay, I literally did just make that up on the spot just before the show started. But anyway, it was a playlist, and it was requested. All the songs were requested by Celebrity GP, so it's a pretty good name. Dr. Ranj we had from CBeebies, of course, and ITV This Morning. He's a resident doctor on there, and obviously he's a dancer as well. You know what I'm talking about. Thanks also to Dr. Pixie McKenna and Dr. Dawn Harper from Embarrassing Bodies. You know what, we had Dr. Hilary Jones on last time as well. Maybe I should finish with his request from last time, because Dr. Jones is the perfect... Dr. Jones by Aqua, yeah, the perfect song for Dr. Jones himself, isn't it? Perfect theme tune. Thank you very much to our really special medical science guest. Thanks to Professor Sir John Burn, of course, leading geneticist. Amazing chatting to you, Sir John. Thank you for that. And Professor Yang as well from Imperial College London, talking about robotic surgery. Thank you very much to both of those guests. Absolutely fantastic having you both on. Thank you as well, who we heard from just now, Robert Llewellyn, of course, from Red Dwarf. He's a robot man, android man, Robert Llewellyn. Thanks, Robert. Of course, he was talking about electric vehicles there, and that Fully Charged event is going ahead if you want to check that out. Okay, talking very fast here. Sorry, let's slow down just for a minute. And just thank you again. Thank you for tuning in. Hope you can join me next time, next Wednesday, 6 o'clock until 8, here on Coast FM. And that's it.